Welcome to the Australian Business Executive Podcast, where we speak with Australia's most influential industry professionals on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all our content, including our magazines, podcasts and videos by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is James France, founder of Vanguard Luxury Brands. James is a 30-year veteran of the spirits industry. He started his own spirits importing and marketing company in 2008, and he recently sold it to beer giant Lion. James, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So why don't we start off with, how you got into the alcohol and spirits industry?
Well, I was working at Unilever originally and then Philips Electronics, and it was literally just an ad in the paper back when we had newspapers for jobs, and right back in 1991. And there was an ad for a senior lifestyle marketer, and I didn't know what it was, and I applied, and it turned out to be senior brand manager on Kahlua with a company called Swift and More, which was a very big spirits company in those days. So I came into the industry actually with no liquor experience, which is quite unusual these days because most people do enter the marketing and sales side having come from the industry.
And so do you want to take us through a little bit about your further experience? Because what we'll go into is I'll ask you about how you ended up creating a business for yourself, but you have quite a bit of experience on different brands, don't you?
Yes, yeah. Well, so it's interesting. One way or another, most brands tend to come your way if you stay long enough in the industry. And this job took me to New York, where I worked on J&B Scotch over there. Then I moved over to Remy Cointreau. And one of the early highlights of my career is I was lucky enough to launch Don Julio tequila in the United States, and that is a wonderful premium brand, and went to Mexico several times and met with Don Julio and his family and fell in love with tequila and agave spirits. And I came back to Australia in 2000 when my visa ran out, and I realized that there was just a real shortage of premium spirits. Australian spirits were very mainstream back in 2000. And I'd been exposed to all these wonderful brands over in the US, and I just thought, wow, there's a real shortage here of premium, unique brands. Back then, there was no such thing as craft spirits. It wasn't a term, but in fact, a lot of these brands were what we would now today call craft spirits.
I assume what you're telling me is the catalyst for that is to import or develop and distribute these premium brands. So what became the process of creating Vanguard?
Well, I contacted a few brands that I'd seen over in the States completely out of the blue, and they said, yes, that's great. We're looking to get into the Australian market. Tell me about your company. And I thought, geez, well, I'm really just a guy with a laptop. I don't really have a company as such, but I quickly set up a company, and it's a lot of it is, of course, it's just built on trust and reputation. And I set up this company based on some of the contacts I'd made when I was living over in the US, and contacted several brands. One of the brands I pitched for was a very large tequila brand. They said they really liked the pitch, but they didn't want to go with a startup, which was fair enough. So they went with a more established company. But other companies took the leap of faith and joined my portfolio. And it's fairly simple. What we do is we just import. Now we distribute Australian brands as well, but it was all imports back then. Import them on an exclusive basis and do all the sales and marketing for them around Australia. And, we really do build the brands based on those sorts of relationships. And the more successful you get, the more companies knock on your door wanting to be distributed by you.
Yeah, of course. As we mentioned in the intro, you've recently been bought out or taken over by Lion. Now you and I would know that name quite well because they're an absolute powerhouse within the alcohol brand. But most people probably wouldn't know who they were, or are rather. So do you want to just give us a quick overview of Lion and effectively what that means for Vanguard moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. So the beer industry in Australia historically has been a duopoly between Carlton United and Lion, and they sort of obviously the market shares and the portfolios shift, but it's really those two powerhouses, and they are enormous companies with thousands and thousands of employees. Of course, the market is changing now with larger independent breweries entering the business and diluting that duopoly somewhat. But ultimately, it's still up to two very large companies. And Lion contacted me in early 2018 saying they wanted to get into the spirits industry because they saw craft and premium spirits as a big opportunity. And they said, would you be interested in selling your company? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, because I'm at a point where the company was doing very well, and with our flagship brand, Four Pillars Gin, the expectations kept increasing the more successful we got. And I got to a point where I really needed some serious muscle to sort of back the company to take us to that next level. So it worked really well for everybody. And Lion looked at my books and they said, wow, we had no idea Four Pillars was actually such a big brand. Should we talk to them about buying them as well? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? So I set up a meeting and they ended up buying Vanguard, and they're in the process of buying the rest of Four Pillars Gin as well. So they're taking their commitment to Australian spirits very, very seriously.
So you've mentioned Four Pillars. Why don't you run us through, the brands within your that fit underneath Vanguard?
Sure. I mean, it's about 30 brands, and all with different reasons for being and personalities. And obviously, I couldn't take you through all of them. It would take a couple of hours. But Four Pillars is obviously our biggest brand, Australian gin, and I'm sure that's known to your listeners. It's got about 50% of the Australian gin market share now. We have a really big focus on other Australian brands like Strange Love Sodas, Gospel Whiskey, Morris Whiskey, Crawley's Syrups, Marionette Liqueurs. So that's one of several of our Aussie brands. I think we've got a couple of absolutely gorgeous import brands, or many of them, but we love Michter's American Whiskies and Fortaleza Tequila and all associated brands there. All up, we've got 7 whiskies now in the portfolio from all the major whiskey producing areas of the world, including 2 from Australia. We have 6 agave spirits, so that's 4 tequilas and 2 mezcals. And we have all sorts of liqueurs. We've got Laird's Applejack, which is an old American spirit. We try and really have a well-rounded portfolio that addresses all of our customers' needs. And I base the portfolio on a very simple strategy, which I stuck to like glue over the years, and that is the best brands for the best bars, and that has really helped us stay on focus and really carve out a niche for ourselves in the market.
And so, what do you think? Your key differences?
I think I get asked that a little bit actually, just by other colleagues in the industry, and I think it's I ask that to people when they're coming for a job interview, and the answer is always the same, which is the portfolio and the people. And I think those two things are absolutely what define you in the market. And we have, to be very immodest, we have the best portfolio in Australia. People just look at it in the trade and they just, they gobsmacked at what a wonderful portfolio it is. And we back that up with fantastic people that we just, people that you really want to work with. And I sort of just describe it sometimes like we take the business seriously, but we don't always take ourselves so seriously. And I think those sorts of things work very, very well for us.
Now, the Vanguard as a brand, you guys have actually received quite a lot of industry recognition as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. We're very proud of the fact that the industry's top awards, the ARI Awards, which is Australian Liquor Industry Awards, we've got on-premise supplier of the year 3 of the last 6 years, and so on-premise obviously is bars and restaurants and so on, versus off-premise, which is retail. And the on-premise is the one where brands are built. And so to be regarded by the industry 3 out of the last 6 years as being the best on-premise supplier in Australia is something we're very proud of. And the 3 years out of the last 6 that we didn't win it, we came second. So we really want to hang on to that positioning in the top end of the on-premise market as being, the company to go to when people are putting together a premium on-premise portfolio. Lion is very committed to that as well, and their goal is to move on from the best brands and the best bars. That's always one of our core pillars, but they really want to be positioning Vanguard as Australia's #1 house of craft and premium spirits. So they're very serious and very committed to all of that, and they're giving us amazing support. Actually, before we sold to Lion, I'm sort of going on a tangent here a bit.
Sorry.
Before we sold to Lion, I was handling Dan Murphy's myself, and I thought I was doing a pretty good job. We were getting brands promoted and so on, and catalogs and shelf positionings and all of that stuff. And then when Lion came in, they brought in some very, very good operators to join the business, and they just blew the doors off business like Dan Murphy's and Coles Liquor. And I thought, gee, actually, I really wasn't as good as I thought I was.
So before we finish up today then, James, is there anything else that you haven't had a chance to address?
Yeah, look, there's one thing which applies to all spirits companies in Australia, and that's the level of taxation and excise. It's grossly unfair the way that spirits are taxed compared to beer and wine. And there was the Henry taxation report several years ago that said, quite rightly, alcohol should be taxed on standard drinks, so that whether you're having a glass of wine or a middy of beer or a 30ml shot of spirits, the tax on that drink is the same. And it makes sense for health reasons, responsible service of alcohol, many, many reasons. But unfortunately, for example, wine is taxed on value. So you can buy literally a $3 bottle of wine, and the tax that you're spending on per standard drink is 7 to 10 cents per drink. Whereas if you buy a bottle of spirits, you're spending $1 per drink on tax. So it's, we're spending 10 times what a cheap wine company would be spending for the same amount of alcohol. And I really think the government needs to equalise that. Not only will it make it an even playing field across the entire category, but it would really help this burgeoning spirits industry, which is just being held back by these crazy taxes. And if the spirits industry becomes more affordable for people to drink these things, then that helps the farmers, it helps everybody across the board in the industry. So it actually creates jobs, and it will make it a much fairer and more responsible playing field. So that's one comment that I feel very, very strongly about. The Australian Distillers Association is lobbying the government very seriously on this, and I hope they're successful in the long run. But apart from that, it's a wonderful industry, and I'm so glad to be seeing such wonderful Australian brands that are being locally and globally recognised across the board. It's a very exciting time.
Well, James, I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. It's been great to chat with you, Jesse.
This has been a production of the Australian Business Executive, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Australian Business Executive, including our magazines, podcasts and videos, by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.